you? Today is Thursday, the 19th of March, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. Yesterday, we talked about systems, and today, let me establish the scenario because it's very important. The four stages of any business, and probably you're very familiar with this, the business life cycle is a startup or the introduction, the growth, the maturity, and then is the decline or the renewal, the reinvention, the innovation. So these stages represent the journey from initial concepts, cash flows, challenges, to establish the market share, establish the operations, and ultimately decided the innovation or the exit. Now, what is going on with the business that is already established? You say, well, we are not a startup, but guess what? You kind of are a startup since the moment that you will need to continue being relevant in the market. And I'm pulling here the model on the screen because I want to show you this portion here, which is in the operation system of the advisory board, what we look from the outside in into organization when you need an edge, right? So the transformation and innovation, you need to brand your strategies and your performances. I'm going to leave this on the screen because I wanted to show you something today. This is very important. So today, as I mentioned, I want to talk about edge because when the companies are already established and they are not a startup in this business life cycle, what tends to happen is they coast, right? Or they stall somewhere and they start to lose relevancy. And then is where the innovation is start to happen in a different ways, but not very pleasant ways, because the controls without the reinvention can produce a very well governed decline, right? So we have a very good governance in our company, and this happens for organizations that are led by the founder with executive teams, managing board of directors. Is a very well governed decline. So that is the unpleasant reality. A company can have a decent reporting, decent committees, decent controls, and still lose relevance in the market. Why? Because the risk here is the strategic drift, right? So you have a very good strategy, but it's starting to get a little bit disengaged with the reality of what's going on. So let me unpack this today and how an advisor like myself or an advisory board will look into this, applying this operating system. Let's put it this way. It is the habit of protecting yesterday's model so carefully that the board ends up, or the executive team or the leaders end up underfunding tomorrow's position. And tomorrow's position are very important because you have to look what's going on, to have a pulse in the market. And they say, yeah, but we are so busy. Like today is the 19th of March, and what happened? In 2 weeks' time is month end. But not only is month end, it's quarter end, right? So you have two significant events happening at the same time. That happens 4 times a year, by the way. But actually, what happened with your strategy that you started back in Q4 and now change also, by the way, with the events that happened since last 3 weeks in Middle East. So that is why the edge section of the advisory board operating system really matters. So myself as a board advisor, this is a section where I help boards or executive teams or founders turn reinvention into a governed capability, right? And governed capability is something that is when you govern the uncertainties, the ambiguities, the leadership fog. So where we have to put our attention, how we handle the boomerang effect that we mentioned this week, when people are start to bring back to you the problems or the situations that allegedly, I'll say, were already established where or who were the responsibles and the results that they had to bring, and then all of a sudden are back to your desk. And when the business needs expertise across technology, product, market narrative, sector shift, or international growth, an international advisory board lets you bring in the right capability to the problems quickly without the delay and cost of trying to force one executive to cover everything, right? So as usual, I use the UK frameworks, guidance, and guardrails as an example because I think actually it's very clear. I can name the sources so you can go and check by yourself. This is applicable for any geography, any company size, any place in the world because they are very clear. Your geography, your jurisdiction surely has something similar in place. So, but at least it's something you can start to look into and I say, okay, fine, this is a way that I do it in the UK. I can download it, I can study it, and I see what is this is applicable and legal, obviously, in my jurisdiction. And from there, I can set up a plan and start to adapt this to where I am today. Now, three problems that I see, and this is coming from official sources, is the governance, the governments in this year, January 26, says that 38 of the 50 AI Opportunities Action Plan commitments have already been met. 38 out of 50 AI opportunities. So the external environment is moving, whether your internal adoption rhythm is ready or not. So also this is curious statistics or prediction, if you want to say it, from Gartner. They say that in the coming years, 40% of all the AI projects are going to fail. 40%. So it's almost half of whatever today is a big noise is already scoped to fail. So then where are you going to put your innovation, your reinvention, your capabilities when you already start to see that certain things are already accomplished and other things are already predicted to be failing. So then you have to step back and say, hold on a second, where I am, where is it going on, and where the things are going to go, or at least to have a very good idea of the trajectory to the future. So that ambiguity, that uncertainty, that fog start to clear, and they say, okay, now I have a very good idea where these things are going, and then I can sit and make some decisions. Now, problem number two is that technology adoption review says financial constraints, management skill gaps, and resistance to change are major barriers to adoption. And here we go again. This is the fog. I say, well, resistance, management skills. So the problem is not only the technology itself, it is the leadership capacity and operation willingness. So it's two things, by the way, capacity and willingness. That's why international advisory boards are so important, because you have the capacity, you just need the willingness. And then the capacity brings different skills and experiences and expertises that you cannot imagine today. And problem number three is the UK Innovation Diffusion Survey shows that adoption journeys often require outside support and funding. In other words, reinvention rarely happens because somebody had a good idea in a workshop. It happens because the systems that we spoke yesterday is built to absorb and scale change, right? So here is the big things that you have to think. But if you are funneled or tunnel in quarter and a month end, probably these kind of things are like, I don't have time for these. That's why it's so important an external, independent, and international advisory board helping you to see all these things so you can thrive. You can go through all this fog, all these messes, all these uncertainties, ambiguities that are happening in the world. So in other words, imagine reinvention is not really a brainstorm. It is a portfolio managed for the future, right? So it's something that is manageable. If something is manageable, it's measurable, and if it's measurable, it's achievable, right? So then you start to bring down to earth something that sounded perhaps as a good idea. Now you start to bring it to earth. You know exactly what's going on. You can manage it, measure it, and accomplish that. This is where boards often miss the moment. They ask whether a new technology matters. That is too early, right? Is this AI thing is going to matter? That's too early to say. So Then they ask whether the business should make a big bet on that technology. Well, that is often too late because actually the momentum happened already. And as the survey already shows, 38%, 38 out of 50 planned implementation already is done. So what about this question? Let me rephrase this question. So what repeatable mechanisms do we have for testing, backing, scaling, or killing if new capabilities before the market forces the answer on us, right? So what about if we have a response, not a reaction? That's what I'm trying to say. How about if we have a control of the responses rather than a reaction of what's going on? So because the market is not very fair, to be honest, or to be frank, is very, if you start to lose the relevance of the things that you do, the market is going to shift right away to the next person that is going to be relevant, or the next organization, the next service, or the next product. And here's an example of how leadership act upon these ambiguities and uncertainties. And this is an example I provide, I think, yesterday or the day before, about Steve Jobs. When he was invited back to Apple in 97, he discontinued 70% of the production line, 210 products, because he did exactly this. Because the edge that he was looking for was not a speech. It's not a trend deck. It's not what everybody's doing. It's literally a pilot for graveyards. So it's a disciplined pipeline. He was saying, we are going to focus on the things that make us premium, different. And the time proved that right. Look at Apple today, one of the most profitable companies in the world. Anyway, so as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider is the following. Number one, put a kill and invest logic in place and define what gets tested, what gets funded, what gets scaled, and what gets stopped. Without that, transformation becomes a sequence of expensive exceptions, and you don't want that, really. Suggestion number two, separate core optimization from future options, right? Core optimization from future options. Use one track to improve the current model and other to build what could replace or extend it. This stops today's revenue pressure from crushing tomorrow relevance. And again, this word, relevance. You have to continue to be relevant to your market and to your future market, particularly. And here's a good thing that actually we discussed 2 weeks ago with a company, and I asked them which is the average age of their management team, leadership, board, and they say everybody was above 60 years old. And I say, well, this is a big challenge for yourself, gentlemen, because the buyers that this company is going to have in the coming future today are 17, 16 years old, and they don't know yet they are going to be your buyers. You know why they're going to be your buyers? Because your products are targeted to a certain place of the population that is immediately out of university. So the 17, 18 years old in 5 years' time are going to be your buyers or not, literally. So you have to bring fresh people into here where they have teenagers as sons and daughters, because they understand what their children are doing. They have immersed intel in their own households on how the things operate. So an advisory board of silverbacks, as they call it, like people with a very large career, very long careers and experiences, is very good. You already have that. You need to bring people in their late 30s, early or mid 40s with teenagers in their household. Why? Because these people are the ones that start to think about what is relevant for your organization to start to work today for the population that become your customers in 5 years' time, and you start to adapt. You have a very good plan to succeed and be resilient as an organization. And if you don't see these things because you are too busy just running the business, probably in 6 or 5 years' time, this organization is going to suffer big time, right? Now, this is just an example, but it's just to give you an idea. And suggestion number three, refresh the board narrative from future fitness, not past successes. Well, pretty much is what I said. The Office for, but this is supported by stats, by the way. The Office for National Statistics Management Survey ask firms about the adoption of AI and other technologies, because management capability is part of economic performance. And we talk about this yesterday too, about they are looking for efficiency, not just the reporting portion. They want to see how efficient is the board, the executive team, etc., etc. So boards should treat that as a strategic signal, not a technical footnote, right? And when I say boards, I talk about founders, executive teams, C-suites, etc., etc. So many companies say they want innovation. Great. Far fewer build the conditions that let innovation survive contact with the budget pressures, internal politics, and quarterly reporting. I'm talking about quarterly reporting. We are a quarter in now. So that is why the edge often disappears inside very competent organizations, not because they lack ideas, because they lack a governed reinvention engine. And this is a key. You want a governed reinvention engine. You are not a startup anymore, but you have to have that portion of the business that acts like a startup. Otherwise, you are going to lose the relevance in the market. Now, what do you do, or what do you gain working with me? So it's three things. First is outcomes, second is differentiators, and three is a risk reduction. In terms of outcomes, we use the edge section of the advisory board operating system here in the screen to create an always-on reinvention capability with explicit choice rules, capital discipline, and a stronger future-facing narrative, like the example I provided today. In number two, we create a differentiator. I create a differentiator for you with an international advisory board. I work with boards, executive teams, C teams, etc., to assemble an international advisory board around the reinvention brief, bringing in specialists, judgment on technology, products, partnerships, commercial models, and investors' narrative without a consulting in bulk or freezing the company into a wrong capability mix. And this is very frequent. You go outside for a consulting firm that they bring what the things that you already know, but they put it in a nice PowerPoint, they put it in the screen, they charge you a fortune, but they don't say what you have to do today to achieve those things that you already know many, many, many times, right? So this is what we have help to put together business outcomes with very, very specific milestones in how you are going to achieve that. And in terms of risk reduction, I love this example from the public company Smith and Nephews. On the first half of 2025 results, they show what a live innovation pipeline looks like in public. The company said that products launched in the last 5 years accounted for 3/4 of its first half year growth. 3/4 of their growth is coming from innovations they launched 5 years ago. That's exactly where I mentioned earlier about this excellent and fantastic team that they are about 60 years old, but they need fresh blood into their decision-making, thinking, and awareness of the future of their market. The next 5 years, what's going to happen with our target audience, right? So that is reinvention translating into measurable commercial output, and we can do that for you. Now, the board does not need to predict the future perfectly. That would be absolutely perfection is the killer of all these things. I'm sorry for the term, but actually that's a reality. It does need better mechanisms for meeting the future earlier, right? You want a mechanism that can adopt and work as the things goes along, but you have the control of that mechanisms. That is a difference between strategic edge and strategic theater, unfortunately. Right. One action you can take home today, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less, ask which part of your current budget is explicitly reserved for building the new 3 years of relevance. And again, that wonderful word, relevance, rather than defending the next quarter. So let's pause here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow I will put all the 4 sections of this quadrant that you see on the screen. I will put it together and show what the whole advisory board operating system means for your board or your executive team or your founder, or yourself as a founder, your agenda. So again, if you're a founder, a leadership, you're in the leadership team, or you're backed, you are receive funding, or you're an executive group that looks into or want help to apply the advisory board operating system to build your edge, set up a 30-minute call so I can understand your position and how an independent international advisory board looking from the outside in your organization can help you and your team without stepping on your toes, without the traditional consulting overhead, and without the public theater. Right. So have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.